Hey everyone, I hope you all are having a great week this week. This time we're in week 5 of the unit on resilient faith. We're looking at having a joyful faith, and the text is found in 1 Peter chapter 4, verses 12 through 19. I'm in Pastor's office this week. He is on vacation, and so I'm going to use his office, but don't tell him. Also, I'd like to apologize for not getting a video out last week. Sometimes things come up and time gets short and you just don't have time to do things. So my apologies on that. Well, the point of this week's lesson is to choose joy even in the midst of life's difficulties. And I'm going to read just a couple of verses and share a few things with you. I'm going to read those first 2 verses out of 1 Peter chapter 4. I'm going to read verses 12 and 13. It says, "Dear friends, do not be surprised at the fiery ordeal that has come on you to test you, as though something strange were happening to you. But rejoice inasmuch as you participate in the sufferings of Christ, so that you may be overjoyed when His glory is revealed." One thing that I want to point out today is that true suffering exists around the world. I'm going to talk just specifically about 2 different countries today. The first is North Korea, and you've probably heard lots of reports in the recent years about how strict the regime is there, and what you may or may not know is that the only legal worship that can exist in North Korea is the worship of the dictator, of that nation's leader. If people are caught having even private worship services, carrying a Bible, telling people about Christ, that comes with very strict penalties. It can come with imprisonment, torture, and even death. I want you to listen to some words that the Reverend Eric Foley has to say about North Korea. Eric Foley is a CEO of a ministry that ministers to North Korean Christians. I want you to listen to these words. "Our reckoning that North Korea is the worst place to be a Christian says more about our own understanding of Christianity than it does about North Korea." If you remember from our lesson last week, we're to expect suffering. And so North Korean Christians know that that's part of being a Christian, is to expect suffering. Here's something else that Eric says. "If you are a Christian in a country where no Christians are suffering for Jesus, you probably ought to be more concerned than if you are a Christian in a country where nearly every Christian is suffering for Jesus." So as you go through your lesson today, think about those North Korean Christians and specifically pray for them. The other country I want to talk about is Iraq. And there is a fringe group called ISIS that has taken over several cities, and they have gone through and marked on Christians' houses as a symbol. And you'll see here it's a red symbol. It's their letter Nun, and it's similar to our letter N. And that letter is the first letter in their word for Nazarene, which pretty much translates as Christian. So they are labeling houses and businesses of Christians with the intent of coming back and destroying the property and rounding up the Christians that live there. So another set of people to be praying for specifically this week in your Sunday school class. So in class today, I would ask you to pray for persecuted Christians around the world, whether they be in North Korea, in Iraq, or several other places. Pray for the persecuted church. Here in America, at most, we are inconvenienced. We sometimes are concerned that we might lose a tax-exempt status. That is no way persecution. As you read and you've become more familiar with some of the reports of what's actually going on around the world and what happened in the first century against Christians, that is persecution. So let's keep that in mind, and it'd be a good thing to point out in your class the difference between persecution and inconvenience. If you'd like to get some more information on the persecuted church in the world, I have a couple of websites I can suggest to you. They're listed here, persecuted.com and persecuted.org, 2 different websites that deal with how Christians are being mistreated all over the world just because of their faith. I'd like to leave you with a quote from an early church father. His name is Tertullian, and here's what he said. He lived in the 2nd and 3rd centuries. He said, "The blood of the martyrs is the seed of the church." Why don't you think about that and ask the question in class, what does that mean? I think that would be a good discussion point as you talk about persecution and the persecuted church. Well, I hope you have a great lesson, and I'll see you next time.